why music? You know, why spend your time diving into a craft? Why spend your time getting better at an instrument? Why spend your time, you know, practicing scales and arpeggios and transcribing tunes and, just annoying all the people around you with your exercises and hopefully disciplined practice sessions. What I can tell you is that music, where a lot of people, their entrance into it, whether it's from, you picked up an instrument in school, whether you started playing at your church, whether it was just something that you did with your family, at a certain point, unfortunately, in our world, at a certain point, most people feel like they have to make a choice. And that choice usually goes between, well, I'm not going to do this professionally, so what's the point? I should just give up. Like, if I'm not going to be able to play professionally, I should just stop practicing, stop getting better. And honestly, I think that's a really sad thing. There's at a certain there's an essay there's an essay that I like to go back to all the time, and I feel like I need to reread it again, honestly. John Philip Sousa, I think it was in 1908, he wrote an essay called "The Menace of Mechanical Music," and it's really super interesting because where he is coming from in that day and age is the phonograph just got invented. Recorded music just started coming out for the first time. And, I encourage you to read it, but his basic thesis is that I can hear, I'm in my rehearsal space and I hear this flute player playing. I don't know if the mic's picking it up or not. But his basic thesis is that music is inherently a spiritual act. And that what he is warning against is that by capturing music on a record and listening to it like that on its by capturing music on a record and by experiencing music that way, it actually robs the human listening to it of the soul that is inherently in a performance. And it's really interesting because, from where we're at in our day and age, with Spotify and YouTube, and now with AI, where you can just type in, oh, I want to hear this song, and, Sonos can produce it or whatever. It's really hard for us to imagine the world that Sousa was living in back then. A world where most people who had some sort of, love for music had either a guitar, a piano, an accordion, a banjo in their house, and somebody knew how to play it. And if you wanted to hear a song, your options were pretty limited. You couldn't just type in your phone like, oh, da, 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 da. You had to go convince someone to play it for you, learn how to play it yourself, or leave your house and go outside to wherever music was being played, whether that was in church, whether that was in the town square, whether, like some big artist was coming through town and putting on a concert. Those were your options. Outside of that, there was really no way to experience music. And at that time, amateur musicianship was huge. It was very much like everybody kind of had, and obviously at varying levels, there were the virtuosos and the masters, but like it was so common to be a part of the musical experience in your region, in your place, where because you weren't able to just dial up, a Spotify playlist, or, even where he was at, like listen to a CD or a vinyl record, they were still very, he's talking very, very early phonograph, like the probably like the Louis Armstrong Hot Fives would come out in 10 years or something like that. Like, I need to do more research or whatever. But so, in this essay, Sousa is lamenting what he sees as the death of regional music. With everybody able to kind of listen to the people who are just generally considered the greats, he predicted, and this is what happened, he predicted that the amateur musician would die. That the practice of practicing music and the spiritual act that comes out of that would just become something that people saw as not a worthwhile pursuit, because why spend your time or your money honing a craft and something that takes hours and years of your life to perfect, when you can just buy the record and listen to the best of the best over and over and over again. And unfortunately his thesis was kind of right. People stopped, as now we're looking back on it over 100 years later. And, I remember talking to, when I was in my 20s, talking to some of my musical mentors, people who kind of came up playing in the 70s and the 80s. And their big lament was like, yeah, there used to be so many gigs, there used to be so much work, and then DJs happened. And it was kind of crazy thinking about like that world where if most weddings, most events, most even clubs would have a live band, and then at a certain point the gigs started going away because DJs came on the scene. It was more profitable for a club to hire a DJ than it was to hire a band. They were able to keep fresh on the new music and all of that kind of thing. And now in our world we see that DJs are everywhere and live bands are really few and far between. But I kind of want to argue for something that goes beyond all of that, that really what Sousa was saying in that essay, the Menace of Mechanical Music, what I'm talking about, is that humans need music inherently. Humans need art, I would say. And I would say that music is one of those art forms that we really, really do need. It's the reason why churches use music to kind of bring their people together. It's the reason why we all have this collective experience when we're experiencing a song together. There's really nothing like it. So what am I getting at here? One of the points that Sousa makes in that essay is that there's a transfer of spiritual energy. There's this transfer of soul when a human is performing music for another human, whether that's a band on stage or even in that essay he talks about like how tragic it would be that a child will no longer be sung a lullaby by his mother, and that instead that child will be eased to sleep by a piece of mechanical music coming from a record box. And while I think it can sound silly and outdated, I really do think there's something here that we've missed. I really do think that there's something that at some point along the way we all kind of stopped diving into the craft of music as a collective humanity. It was way easier to just experience music from the recorded version than to, spend your time really getting to. It's hard. It's hard. Practicing this freaking hunk of metal all day, getting together with other people who practice their hunks of metal, and getting it to the point where it sounds good and it feels good is not really something that a lot of people want to spend their time doing. But what I can tell you is that it's really one of the best ways to figure out yourself, to look into your soul and see what's going on in there. And as you interface with music and as you interface with your instrument, you can really, it requires you to dig down deep, because there are times where you'll be sitting there frustrated. It's not working. It's just not happening for you. You're beating your head against the wall. You're going, why can't I get this? Why can't I figure this out? Why does everybody else sound better than me? Why? And it's in those moments that your character is created. It's in those moments that you have to look at the stories you're telling yourself about why this isn't working out and why you want to do it and why the hard work is worth it. And it requires you to dig down deep. And if you do, the rewards are huge. The amount of self-expression that you can get, the amount of release that you can feel, the amount of community that you can build with a performance and a band is incredible. And I would say in our world where we're increasingly getting more and more disconnected, where, AI and the robots are just taking more people's jobs and more of that, really, one of the few things that we have left as humans is self-expression. Figuring out what's in your soul and figuring out a medium to get it out so that you can become who you were meant to be in this world, so that you can experience the divine, so that you can connect with the world, so that you can really experience yourself. Like I said, my thing is the tuba. I play other instruments too. I may not play the tuba for the rest of my life. But I'm sold on this concept of find a medium, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's business. Find a medium, dive into it, and go as hard as you can on it until it's literally coming out of your fingertips, until you can't mess up with it, until you have your 10,000 hours. Because it's once you get to that point that really the fun, starts to happen, and you can really figure out who you are and what you get to contribute to the world. And that's why music is one of the most powerful forces. Music is, 10,000 people in a crowd can all be talking about all sorts of things, but once a song happens and they're all singing the same chorus together, or they're all chanting the same chant together, now that's power, and it unites, and it is really, there's not really much like it. Even all of the different art forms have their way of being a super powerful thing, but music has this thing where it can forge a community together. It can build bonds that are everlasting. I've heard neurologists say something about how, a crowd singing together, or they study like churches and group singing, and it literally spreads a neurological glue over these people where suddenly they care about each other in a way that they didn't before, just because they're all freaking singing the same chorus of the same song together. And that's power that every human has access to. You know, whether you're going to be a pro touring the world or just playing for your friends and family in your town, it's a worthwhile pursuit. And that's really what I'm about, is getting us all back to exploring that pursuit of music. You know, whether you are, you know, super advanced in the jazz world or the classical world, whether you are, you know, just beginning, whether you know, just like to kind of like get together with your friends and jam, it's all worth it. And it's all there waiting for you. So music. Figure out what you love about it. Figure out different ways that you can interface with it in your life. And go hard. Because when you do, there's nothing like it. Thanks for listening.